Hey gang, we are in the home stretch. For those of you who still don't know me, where the hell have you been all day? I'm John Michael Salvato, the founder and director of the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, whose faculty are bringing these incredible workshops we've had for the last several hours coming to you live. And for those of you that are watching on the replay, we welcome you as well. Our next class will begin in just a couple of minutes, and then there will be a very short break. Usually there's a 15-minute break. There will only be a 10-minute break after this presentation and a short presentation afterwards in which I'm going to have the privilege to do something I know a lot of you are waiting for, and that is to take you for a look under the hood, a peek behind the curtains so that you can actually see the Inner Alchemy Mystery School and see what it is that we've been talking about all day. This is an interactive broadcast, but it is not going to be one where we put the comments up on the screen. We will answer the questions as they when the presentation's over, most likely, but maybe as they come in. Just kind of playing that by ear. And again, remember, at the end of the next session, we will be doing that drawing where two lucky people will come away with some amazing gifts. The grand prize is valued at more than $900. The second prize worth more than $700. Details will follow in the private Facebook group. So this is your opportunity. If you've not been part of the private Facebook group, then be sure to check that out, because that's where those two people are going to be chosen from. Our next presenter is a favorite among my drag characters. Some of you have seen her on stage. Some of you have seen her on YouTube or on Facebook Live, and is actually a new member of the faculty, which I may grow to regret at, at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. Tia Angelina Serafina Tutta-Cosa will be talking today about transcending gender, queer magic on the fringes, kind of a continuation, sorry, a continuation of the amazing discussion we had a couple weeks ago on the brews. So we hope that you'll enjoy and find some inspiration in this. Our hope throughout the entire day, since 11 o'clock Eastern time this morning until right now, all the way through to the end, is that what we present to you in 30 short minutes each segment inspires you and your magical practice as we celebrate Halloween and the approach of Samhain and Shadowfest and all of the other celebrations that bring us closer and allow us the opportunity to reconnect with our sacred ancestors, with or our plant ancestors, the ancestors of place, and the ancestors of time, including the old ones. So, with that said, it is my privilege to bring to you Zia Angelina Serafina Tutta-Cosa. Hello, my darlings, and I hope you are enjoying the classes today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Zia Angelina Serafina Tutta-Cosa, the Strega Rustica, and my beautiful John Michael asked me to talk to you today about a topic that so many of you have asked about. You know, a couple weeks back, my John Michael had a panel of some incredibly insightful, kind, and generous practitioners of queer and gender nonconforming magic on his show, The Brew. If you haven't seen it, you must check it out. I'll put it in the comments below. And your comments and thanks for the show led to us doing this segment, which we are calling Transcending Gender, a look at how magic on the fringes can help transform the practice of the craft across the spectrum. So if you'll do me a favor right now, go ahead and type in the comment where you're watching from. We have people that are coming in to check out these classes today from all over. So wherever you're watching from, put it in the comments down below so that we can see where you are watching from. And so I know that we have some folks watching from here's Canada and there's Australia and Taiwan, China, wow, and of course across the United States, even as far away as Colombia in South America. So welcome to everyone. And I just want to say that what we're doing today, we don't have a lot of time. There's 30 minutes to be able to share my message with you. And so I want to dive right in. And the idea here is that we're starting a conversation. This isn't me preaching at you. This isn't me teaching you something that's written in stone. This is an opportunity for you and me and everyone to start a conversation around gender, around transforming our magical practice. And so let me just go ahead and fix what I should have done here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which should already be up on the screen in front of you, and we're going to talk about magic on the fringes. So let's dive in. You know, throughout time, gender nonconforming and LGBTQ people have practiced the esoteric arts and sciences. This is not something that's new. History records the ways in which various cultures held LGBTQ practitioners in higher esteem. We were recognized as shamans, as healers, seers, and wonder workers. Even in the later cultures where the patriarchal deception of pretending to be repulsed by LGBTQ persons took hold so that nobody would notice what they were doing in their bedrooms, cultures secretly turned to those who were living on the fringes of society for magic and healing. And quite often, that was our people. So over the next 25 to 30 minutes, we're not going to have time, like I said, to dive really deep into the cultural history of magical practitioners. Thought leaders and influencers in the queer community is a topic that we could spend hours talking about, but we're going to point you to some wonderful resources on the topic in just a minute. We're going to talk less about where we've been and focus more on this moment in time and the potential that exists for our future in this movement. We're going to begin, I think, really just to scratch the surface of why it matters. So first, let's start, like I said, with some recognition of those who have contributed to where we are. Among the great ancestors of our community, we start by recognizing the contributions made by groundbreaking pioneers, including my own Dr. Leo Martello, Eddie Basinski, Alex Sanders, Aleister Crowley, Maud Galt, and others who helped pave the way for LGBTQ visibility in the esoteric community. In the modern era, we offer gratitude, and I encourage you to look at the teachings of some of the courageous and uplifting works of people like Christopher Penczak and Cassandra Snow, Casey Javinko, and Matt Oren, Storm Fairywolf, Devin Hunter, Chaz Bogan, Michael Herkis, and Shaheen Miro, just to name a few. If you want to learn more about our history and about particular ways in which some of the expressions of magic are being done in the queer community today, check out the wonderful books that these modern era teachers are offering. Let's talk a little bit about intersectionality, because intersectionality is something we don't always have a chance to talk about. The intersection of queer spirituality, feminism, and the Black and Indigenous people of color social justice and human rights movement reveals a tapestry that is as powerful and threatening to the patriarchy as it is magical and threatening to pop culture narratives. Now, many have talked about the experience of 20th century pop culture witchcraft, particularly those paths that follow the homophobic musings of Gerald Gardner and all of the various Wiccan offshoots that resulted from what he contributed, if you can use that word, in the 40s and the 50s. In many ways, thanks to some of the people that I just named, the modern day practitioners from our community, These neo-Wiccan, coven-oriented traditions are now open and inclusive, doing beautiful work. Some are even exclusively LGBTQ traditions that have created the past 25 years of magic and support and inclusion that have helped a certain segment of our community become mainstream and helped challenge others to look at their ideas of gender and sexual orientation. Now, we are minorities within minorities, but there's another group, a group of minorities within the minorities whose practices of the esoteric didn't line up neatly with the clever and imaginatively fabricated backstories and traditions of the mainstream. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think that this minority within the minority is the one that is becoming the fuel, the grist for the mill for real transformation to take place. We've always been part of the magic world, but because we're not coven oriented and we don't rely on the narratives often told in the pop culture, our traditions often appear to be left in the shadows, on the fringes, just as they have throughout recorded history. Had to do that. You know, Covendom and initiatory pop culture witchcraft has empowered those who have often been marginalized and disparaged and cast away, especially in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. The focus of those types of paths differ greatly from the focus and public face of another segment of the magical community, in which LGBTQ practitioners have often been the standard bearers for generations. And that's the practitioners of hereditary, ancestral, folk magic, traditional cunning work, and root work, healing, and mysticism. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. You see, these traditions are options for those who don't fit in within the context of the Afro-Sicilian folk magic, stregoneria, as well as the practices of Afro-Caribbean, Appalachian, Southern American traditions of the African diaspora, voodoo, Catholic conjure, Santeria, and other traditions like it. There has often been a safe harbor for those for whom the 20th century narratives of the pop culture expressions of witchcraft did not and will never resonate. And we should stop, regardless of our gender identity or sexual orientation, stop and consider and recognize and even cultivate gratitude for these sometimes hidden practitioners living on the fringe who serve all of humanity, especially in times of pandemic and social upheaval. So, who are our people? Well, it can be difficult to spot us. We've become so accustomed to living on the fringes that we are often invisible, hidden in plain sight. But if you look closely, if you ask, we'll openly share with you all the things that mark our practice, which often stand in contrast to pop culture witchcraft. We don't necessarily fit in the witchy aesthetic, except for me, because I fit in wherever I go. Our practice is less about the drama, the liturgy, the politics of ritual magic and circle casting and glittery candles and beautiful robes, because such things neither impress nor play key roles in our traditions. If I want to dress up in a witchy aesthetic, I dress in a witchy aesthetic, but it's not for magical purposes, it's for fabulous purposes. The cornerstone of our practice is a connection with our ancestors, including the ancestors of the earth, the ancestors of place, of blood, and those who serve from other worlds, who work with us as spiritual allies, as companions, as our beloved. Those are the marks of our people. Now, why focus on the ancestors? Well, ancestral work, root work, inner alchemy, and healing are the foundations of our practice, because we recognize the privilege that we hold in this precious lifetime to pick up the mantle of those on whose shoulders we stand, to continue the generational healing, to maintain the generational legacies, to leave a better world for those who have yet to be born. We regard as ancestors those whose blood we share, those whose spiritual or subtle DNA we share, including the spirits of the plants, our first ancestors, the old ones, the orishas, those spirits who embody the powers of life and death and fertility, as well as those archetypal entities referred to or regarded by those primitive minded ancestors of ours as gods and goddesses and daemons. Now, how is our focus different from the mainstream culture? Our focus differs from those who are bound by books and ritual formulas and initiatory paths, hierarchical, which means patriarchal, structure, and other highly visible pop culture, often Hollywood inspired versions of the craft. And they're different in these ways. Instead, these things, of these things that we think of in pop culture witchcraft, our working, our path, our tradition is often focused on working in harmony with the nature and liminal worlds, healing generational trauma, serving those oppressed by society, bringing health and healing to our communities, working to prepare those transitioning from this life to the next, and empowering those who are oppressed, who are marginalized, and helping them to reclaim their power and their sovereignty. Within the context of the queer experience, we are the ones who most frequently and unapologetically focus on the issues society isn't always comfortable talking about. Things like combating misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, and racism, exploring sacred sexuality outside the bounds of dualistic or binary expressions, liberating our community to reclaim their sovereign identity, including gender identity and relationship sovereignty and cultural identity, exploring the healing journey of intense shadow work, ancestral reconnection, and celebration of our diversity. And we do this because we're unfettered by the politics of covendom. We don't have to worry about whether our publishers are going to allow us to speak out on social justice issues, or that we have to play nice, or that we have to avoid those who are a little bit controversial, because we are the social justice warriors. Now, these differences that I explain are just different expressions. We're still one community. And I think that's important. We're frequently the ones who are willing to stand alone if necessary in order to dismantle unjust, corrupt, and malignant energies, often led by those who are considered sacrosanct by the pop culture, even if it means being further marginalized, including things like standing up to the bullies, the gatekeepers, and the frauds in certain regions of the country and throughout the world, whose predatory practices include gaslighting, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and financial predatory behavior. You see, by refusing to be part of the efforts to attack other leaders in our community whose expressions of magic differ from our own, we stand as warriors and allies, even to those whose traditions might vary in great ways. Saying no to those who issue such vile edicts as witches, do's, and don'ts, and other bullshit like that, and those who lie and make up traditions and say, oh, this was the ancient Italian tradition, and all they did was repackage Wicca. We're willing to stand up where others cower because they're worried about what their fans will say. They'll worry about what their publishers will say. They'll worry about what their covens will say. We're not bound by that kind of bullshit, and so we don't have to worry. We can stand up for what is right. In short, I think we're fearless in a world addicted to fear. See, unlike those who cower behind the pretense that they prefer not to engage in political discussion, and those whose entire practice easily becomes lost in the caricature and branding they created to hide behind, the postmodern queer practitioner believes that real magic and a real magical practice is engaged. Therefore, Our magic is inextricably tied to social justice, inextricably tied to healing work, inextricably tied to standing up for those who are oppressed. It doesn't hide or run away from political activism and resistance. It works with the ancestors to dismantle the patriarchy, including the distorted and maligned versions of the patriarchy that were created in the 1950s by old, cisgendered, perverted white men, peddled as witchcraft in the decades that followed. So I challenge you to ask yourself, where are all the queer witches at pop culture events, festivals, and educational events? Why are we still the minority? Why aren't there more genderqueer witches represented in our society? It's wonderful to see so many starting to show up on the scene. But why is it taking so long? Where did the distorted and patently false mythologies about Aradia and Diana and Dianus and their heteronormative hierarchies originate? Who benefited and benefits still from these power structures? Why do some of the largest publishers and media companies in society continue to culturally appropriate, promoting the works of non-Indigenous practitioners who are padding the pockets of the white-skinned practitioners on the backs of the BIPOC people, the cultures and traditions and magic that they've stolen in order to write a book? Why are we allowing that to happen? See, this is time, I think, for us as a community, whether you identify as part of the LGBTQ community or you're just an ally, we can all take responsibility and reclaim our voice. Communities exist for pop culture practitioners, which already do a wonderful job of providing encouragement and support for mostly white, cisgender, heteronormative practitioners of 20th and 21st century esotericism, pop culture witchcraft. There's no shortage of covens, no shortage of groups and Facebook groups and local communities and bookshops and other stores. But new intentional grassroots communities founded by LGBTQ persons and their allies are beginning to show up around the world. And I think there could be nothing more magical. And that includes an international community that's sponsoring this event today called the Inner Alchemy Collective, bringing together a diverse group of practitioners from all walks of life, as you've been seeing all day today, where LGBTQ persons are safe and respected and encouraged to express their magic in ways that are authentically their own, as well as having a place where we can come together with our allies and celebrate the diversity of our magical practice. So my suggestion, to sound a little bit like Nancy Reagan, is just say no. Just say no to those who would rather tear us down. What would happen if we say no to the wealthy, predatory individuals, the institutions, the events, and the phenomena that line the pockets of white cisgendered persons on the backs of those who are doing the real work of teaching and serving? What if we just say no to publishers who churn out books about traditions and practices of the communities of color and indigenous communities without ensuring that indigenous practitioners are the ones who are writing the books? What if we support other teachers, other authors, healers, and workers within our LGBTQ community, even when their traditions vary from our own? You see, my friends, I think this is where the transformation takes place. Because as gender nonconforming people, I can tell you that we're always working in the background to overcome some type of injustice against ourselves, against our sisters and brothers and others. And so it comes natural to us as leaders, as warriors, as social justice advocates to step up and bring communities back together again. We've been doing this for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so I want to encourage, as we end this day, to think of the classes that you took today as scratching the surface, a little taste of what could happen if we just took a little bit of time to show some respect for one another, to genuinely be interested in another person's perspective, and then to be willing to start a conversation in which we share our own experiences. Because that's how the fabric of community is woven into the beautiful tapestry that I think potentially exists for all of us. And that's what I want for you. I teach a class on transcending gender and queer magic in the LGBTQ community at the Inner Alchemy and Mystery School. But there are practitioners in Covendom, practitioners in folk magic, practitioners in hoodoo and voodoo who are doing the same beautiful work in their traditions. So I'll end by just saying, hey girl, hey, stay in touch with a bitch. On the screen in front of you, you have my Instagram and Twitter and YouTube channel handle. You've got my Facebook handle. My John Michaels handle will be on his presentation. And then you've got John Michaels in my Twitter, what do you call it? TikTok handle on the screen too. I would love it if you follow me and engage with me and talk to me and tell me about your tradition. And so that's how I'm going to end this presentation today, is asking you to let me know two things. In one comment, I want you to tell me the tradition you practice so we can celebrate and affirm one another's practices. And then I want you to put another comment. And in that other comment, if there is one question that you have about the queer experience of Magick and how we go forward from here, ask me the question, and I promise you, I will answer that question. I want to thank my John Michael and all of the faculty members of the Mystery School for making this such an incredible day. I'm so happy that we have this opportunity to do this today. You know, when I originally set out to do this, I thought that I would start by doing sort of an I am what I am moment. And as we did the presentation, I was going to take things off step by step by step, because I wanted people to understand the difference between, and the intersectionality between being gender nonconforming and what often gets mistaken as being gender nonconforming. People say to me, "Oh, so you're part of the trans community. You're gender nonconforming. How come we don't see you in drag more often?" And while drag is fabulous and it's entertainment, and this is a character that my John Michael created magically, there's magic in drag, but that's not what it means to be part of the trans community. Drag is a character that I portray. The person who is gender nonconforming, the person who wants more than anything else for you to reach out, to become part of me, of my tribe, to become connected and share your magical experience, your perspective. That person doesn't look like this, because trans doesn't have to appear as one of two genders. You see, trans isn't what we do. It's not how we dress. It's who we are. And so on behalf of all of us here at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, this is Zia Angelina Serafina Tutta-Cosa. It's also John Michael, thanking you for being with us and reminding you that I'm going to jump into a Zoom room for the next 15 minutes to answer any questions you have and engage with you. And then right after that, I will be back fully as John Michael to talk to you about the Mystery School. Thanks for spending time with us. I hope these last 25 or 30 minutes have been as wonderful for you as they have been for me. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions,
calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred,
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation
of cultural and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.